Well, I would have been about 14, and Methodist people celebrate Whit Sunday, which is, of course, a bank holiday. And in our circuit, we would celebrate it by having a rally in a country chapel where there was a large field that we could play in. So I cycled across. It was about 5 miles to where the rally was being held. Parked my bike and went into the field where people were doing things, and there was a cricket match going on. Well, sort of going on, because there was a young man with a very loud voice rolling around on the grass with some girls. And I thought, oh, that must be Mr. Lecoq's son. Oh! And I didn't have anything to do with the man, young man I should say, for a very long time. It must have been at least 3 years later, on one occasion when Mr. Lecoq and Mrs. Lecoq came to our chapel, that Mrs. Lecoq said, "My son is coming home from the army soon. You must come to tea." I thought. And sure enough, we had a formally written letter from Mrs. Lecoq inviting my parents and daughter June to tea. And we had a sumptuous afternoon tea, and I was seated between Mr. Lecoq and Russell. Russell smelt to high heaven because his parents had kept his clothes in mothballs, and Russell smoked as well. I didn't take any notice of Russell. I talked to his father. And after tea, I was invited to go and look at the view because Mr. and Mrs. Lecoq lived on top of the Melvins, very high up, with the most wonderful view across the valleys. So I went to go look at the view, and Russell came up behind me. And because he'd been in the army in a hot country, his hair was bleached white and he was skeletally thin. Not at all attractive as far as I was concerned. Anyway, he came up behind me and said, "I have to take my mother to a ladies' meeting next Saturday, and I wondered if I could collect you on the way back and take you out to tea." I said, "No, thank you very much. I've got brownies." And apparently Russell had no idea what brownies was. So on the way home, my mother said, "June, you were so rude to Russell. You were very unkind. And he's lost all his friends while he's been away in the army. You must write to him and accept." So I did. Didn't really have any choice. I had to do as I was told. Russell duly turned up in the late afternoon, as I'd said, after 4 o'clock. And I met him dressed in my Brownie Guider outfit. And I marched him round our small holding as haughtily as I knew how, without letting him get anywhere near me. But it wasn't any good, he wasn't put off. So I had to go indoors and change and get in his car. It had a bench seat along the front. So I got into the car and I sat as near to the window as I could. And we drove off, and he began to talk. And he talked about all sorts of interesting things and pointed out all sorts of things that I'd noticed. It's the first time I'd had a conversation like that with another man. It was quite interesting. And he duly brought me back home, and I have no idea what happened to his mother, none whatsoever. But he brought me back to the front door and said, "Can I take you out again?" "Well, no, I'm sorry, but I've got, really do have brownies again. I'll get my diary. 3 weeks' time. Saturday afternoon, yes, okay. 4 o'clock again, yes, okay." And he duly turned up 3 weeks later. This time it was actually quite enjoyable. It brought me back home. "When can I see you again?" So, yes, okay. This time I reduced it down to 2 weeks. And so it went on from there. And I think it was about a total of 3 months. Could only meet at weekends anyway. We didn't have a telephone, although his parents did. So it was either write a letter or make an arrangement before you saw him again, as it were. And eventually we were out one day looking over a fence, I think it was, or a gate, yes, at a view. And he said, "Will you marry me?" And I said, "No, of course not." But it didn't put him off. And he asked me over and over and over again over the next few weeks, until eventually I said, "Oh, all right then." So eventually, yes, I did fall in love with him, and he fell in love with me. It wasn't just a matter of convenience at all. We had a great deal in common, a great deal in common. We both had unhappy childhoods, very unhappy childhoods. And we found comfort in each other, as well as love and warmth, genuine friendship, yes, and understanding. And we have been married 66 years. And we still love each other.